We are now at a point in our BPK 417 obesity weight management course where we're going to start looking at diet and lifestyle interventions for obesity. And a really good place to start that conversation is to look at some large intervention studies that were done on individuals with obesity and gather lessons learned to design and implement better approaches for obesity management. I'm also going to bring in some lessons learned from system science and how we can apply that. So I picked 3 studies in particular that I thought were good, gave a good overview. So we're going to look at the Look Ahead study. We're going to look at the pounds lost study and the weight loss maintenance trials. And I want you to know what was done, what was found, and what are kind of some of the main take-home messages. And then we're also going to apply the intervention level framework and Iceberg Model to kind of figure out why we saw some of the results we saw in these studies as well. And then we're going to end this unit by going over the concept of best weight. So a good place to start is the famous Look Ahead study. And this is a large-scale study that went on for about a decade. So multi-center randomized controlled trial, over 5,000 adults with type 2 diabetes plus overweight and obesity. They compared whether intensive lifestyle intervention was better as diabetes support and education. And in particular, their primary outcome they were looking for was whether this intensive lifestyle intervention had the ability to decrease cardiovascular events within the follow-up period. So when I say intensive lifestyle intervention, there was a weight loss target, there was a physical activity target, and there was calorie restriction as well. And then the diabetes support and education group, weight loss wasn't the main focus of that, but there was a lot of education and support around managing diabetes. So they actually stopped the study because they didn't actually see a difference between these groups as far as cardiovascular events goes. But even though there wasn't a change in cardiovascular events between the two groups, likely because the diabetes support group was actually a really well-conducted group, we did see in the intensive lifestyle intervention group about an 8.6% reduction in weight. So you can see it here, an 8.6% reduction in weight at year 1. And they maintained about a 6% decrease in weight compared to baseline, statistically higher weight loss than in the control diabetes support and education group. And something interesting comes up right away that we see over and over again in weight loss trials is you'll see a big drop in the beginning in weight, and then usually weight goes up after that first year. And something else we can take from this too, yeah, weight goes up, but they were still able to maintain that weight loss. And like I said, because we see this finding again and again, I think it's really important for helping people to frame weight loss, if that is their goal, that it's often higher in the beginning. Weight loss maintenance is an excellent goal in and of itself. And because if you're maintaining weight, you're not actually gaining weight too. But a lot of people could potentially get discouraged when, they see a lot of weight loss in the beginning, but it does creep up over time. In addition to that large decrease in weight in the intensive lifestyle intervention group, we also saw, especially in year 1, we saw increases in physical fitness and then decreases in waist circumference and glycated hemoglobin, which is a marker of how blood glucose is being regulated over time. Improvements in blood pressure, improvements in fitness, HDL, and quality of life. So lots of improvements, even with this, 6% to 8.6% reduction in weight. And I thought this was another really important finding of this study is that physical activity was one of the strongest predictors of long-term maintenance. And these maintainers maintained about 200 minutes per week of physical activity. And a good study to follow the Look Ahead study up with is the Pounds Lost trial, 811 adults with overweight and obesity. And this one's a really interesting one because it looks at diet composition. So for these individuals, they were all on a 750 calories per day caloric deficit, but what changed was the composition of their diet. And this is reflective of some things we saw in the energy balance unit, that you'll notice that there's no p-values that are less than 0.05 in any of these different situations. All participants versus participants who completed the study here on the right. The black represents diets that were higher in protein, fat, or carbs, and the white represents diets that were lower in protein, carbs, and fats. And so when we compared high protein versus low protein, high fat versus low fat, high carb versus low carb, there wasn't, and we kept calories the same, there wasn't significant differences between the groups. The groups overall, again, we see something similar, 7 kilogram weight loss at 6 months, and then 4 kilograms at 2 years. So weight went down, but then it tended to go back up. But weight was maintained on these lower diets. Big take-home message from this is diet composition doesn't matter as much as caloric restriction, a theme that we've talked about before in this class. Another big finding of this study is that adherence predicted success. So that's really what this next slide goes over, is that you'll notice that individuals who participated in more sessions tended to lose more weight, regardless of the type of diet they were on. And this is a message that I really want to hammer home, is that there isn't a perfect diet. There isn't a perfect weight loss program. There isn't a perfect physical activity program. The best one is the one that the person is actually going to do and they're going to stick to. So designing programs that are enjoyable and realistic and sustainable for your specific population, that is going to likely be the most important thing. And then the third large intervention study that I want to go over, this one looked a bit more at weight loss maintenance. So this had an original phase with a 6-month behavioral weight loss program where the average loss in weight was about 8.5 kilograms. And then anyone that had lost at least 4 kilograms was able to participate in the second phase. And they were randomized to different maintenance strategies. So this one's about maintenance. Okay, you lost weight. Can you maintain it? And they tried 3 different maintenance strategies. So self-directed or interactive technology or personal contact to help maintain those behaviors, to help maintain the weight loss. And they followed up for about 30 months. So just like we see in almost every weight loss trial, big weight loss at the beginning and weight tends to trend upward. Big message again, weight regain is common. Often the effects are modest, but it is possible to maintain lower weight than baseline. That was another take-home message from this. And I also wanted to say the counseling group had the least regain. So that's, we're trying to design a program, maybe one with more personal contact. That kind of makes sense to me, is maybe going to be more effective. Again, you can't over-conclude from this study as well, but it gives us things that we can pull from as far as designing best practices, and also how to frame our conversations with the people that we're working with. So overall, the take-home messages of these studies is that while weight loss may appear modest in behavioral interventions, and these are pretty indicative of what we see, about 5 to 10% weight loss. And let's say someone is 300 pounds, 5 to 10% weight loss, we are talking about 15 to 30 pounds. And that to them may seem like a lot, may not seem like a lot, but I would actually argue that that's, if I weighed 300 pounds and I thought that I had to lose weight for my health, and I think that I have to lose 100 pounds, that feels really overwhelming. But if I'm told that I could improve a bunch of health markers with as little as 15-pound weight loss, I'm not saying that's easy, but that is a little more encouraging than you have to lose 100 pounds, you have to lose 150 pounds. And so this could be part of how we frame things with obesity management, bringing back up the 5 A's of obesity management. We want to advise people about the health risks of obesity and then the benefits of modest weight reduction, right? At the need for long-term strategies and treatment options. And then this also speaks to the agree upon part, which is you agree on realistic weight reduction expectations, right? 100 pounds, is that realistic? And is that necessary to improve quality of life? Other key things that came up from this study is that adherence matters more than the perfect diet. Love that. And that maintenance is a challenge, right? And we talked about why that might be. Some of those physiological adaptations to weight loss, right? So metabolic adaptation, increase in hunger cues, these can make long-term weight loss success difficult. And so that's also why the obesity algorithm and Obesity Canada does recommend as a baseline, and with anything, does recommend lifestyle, nutrition, physical activity, and behavioral programs as a low risk and lower cost obesity management practice, but potency is not as high as lifestyle plus medication or lifestyle plus bariatric surgery. But lifestyle is something we recommend. We all should be eating healthy and including physical activity in our lives. That's not just an obesity thing. So how do we make that the norm for as many people as possible and find ways for them to do that in a way that's realistic, sustainable, and enjoyable? And then I thought this was important to put here as well too, is that sometimes we think that weight loss is the only goal, but weight loss, I don't know if framing it as weight loss as the goal is always a good thing. And that's, again, what the obesity algorithm suggests in adult patients with pre-obesity or obesity: improving health, improving quality of life, and improving body weight and composition. Those are three different goals. And yes, they can work together, especially with someone who's had a negative history with weight loss techniques and negative mental experience of that as well. Focusing on body weight and composition isn't the best approach. Can we focus on health? Can we focus on quality of life? And this again speaks to, and I know this is a busy slide, this again speaks to the intervention level framework. Do we have to reframe some deeply held beliefs? Do we have to challenge or reinforce, but in this case, we might have to challenge dominant beliefs about what our bodies should do or how much we should weigh, what it means to be healthy? Do we have to reframe some of those things? Do we have to, speaking of the goals of the system, redefine what success looks like? Maybe success isn't weight loss. Maybe success is improving blood glucose regulation. Maybe success is improving fitness. Maybe success is improving quality of life. Maybe success is improved mobility, right? Do we have to redefine some of those things depending on the population or people we're working with? And then can we create structures, right? Can we not just maybe look at diet, but how does diet and sleep and physical activity and mental health, how are those related to each other? And how do we make improvements across the system so those behaviors are reinforcing each other? And ideally create good positive feedback loops, reinforcing feedback loops that make that behavior change sustainable. Instead of just focusing on like simple solutions, go on this specific diet, that's a structural element, eat protein, that might help, but that's not going to fix everything. That doesn't change deeply held beliefs, that doesn't change goals. And again, this next slide gives you examples of how we could reframe. And so these are examples of like, I would argue, negative ones. How do we shift these to more positive ones that ideally are more helpful for the people that we're working with? And so, what we saw in the results of these studies is we saw patterns and trends. We saw changes, and we saw this is a pattern we saw. We saw weight loss in the beginning and then weight increase. What led to that? So those are what we saw. But what is it about the system that led to that? Why did some people drop out and others didn't? What was it about the structure of their environment, the structure of their lives that made adherence difficult? Was it based on some of their mental models as well? Was it the system as a whole that's based on the mental model of accountability, feeling if you don't succeed, you need to drop out. Success is only defined by weight, and if you don't lose weight, you're a failure. Right? Is that the mental model that people are living with, that's impacting their ability to create the structures that help support long-term maintenance? And again, I feel like I'm oversimplifying this concept as well, but I'm trying to bring in how we can think of these things. And also, one of the things you can do when you're working with people is to try to make the invisible more visible. So we saw that some people dropped out. Why was that? Can we learn more about what are some of the thinking patterns and what are some of the structural limitations in their lives that make adhering to that program so difficult? And then speaking of a different weight-related goal and paradigm, I love the paradigm of best weight as opposed to ideal weight. When I hear ideal weight, usually people have a number in mind, like my ideal weight is whatever. But best weight, according to Arya Sharma and Yanni Friedhoff, is whatever weight they achieve while living the healthiest lifestyle, love this last part, they can truly enjoy. There comes a point where a person cannot simply eat less or exercise more and still enjoy their lives. So we're shifting the paradigm from ideal weight as a number to your best weight is actually the weight you achieve when you're living healthy. Reframing things from like trying to get to a specific number to instead the goal being more focused on physical activity and nutrition that a person can actually sustain and enjoy. That's the goal. And that I don't have to achieve an ideal weight and I suck if I don't achieve an ideal weight. I can achieve my best weight at any time because as long as I'm doing those things, my body is going to settle at the best weight. So shifting ways of thinking and shifting goals can perhaps be a way, and it really depends on the person, but can perhaps be a way to shift a person's system towards better habits, better quality of life, better mental health, which we often forget in this conversation, and a better relationship with healthcare providers as well. And to finish off with the 5 A's of obesity management, we also see some different kinds of goals that we can look towards as opposed to just weight-based goals, right? So medical nutrition therapy, which we're going to talk about, personalize, meet individuals' values, preferences, and treatment goals, that there isn't a one-size-fits-all. That's another bad paradigm. No, we individualize to a person's needs and desires and lifestyle. And then same with physical activity. Can we shift the goal to you have to, lift heavy, which you don't, or you have to be a certain level of fitness, which maybe, not necessarily, right? But to something that's more individualized and adherence focused. So the last 2 A's to finish that off, because they all kind of work together and they speak to what we're moving into as well, are agree on realistic expectations, sustainable behavior goals, and health outcomes, and address the drivers of weight gain, which are going to be different depending on the individual. And then the assist in identifying and addressing drivers and barriers, provide education and resources, and refer to the appropriate provider, right? So once maybe you start talking to a person and their weight isn't changing or their health isn't getting better, you start digging a bit deeper to find out how to make some of those invisible things visible. And maybe you learn that there are mental health things going on, or there's economic things going on, or there is social things going on. And then maybe refer to a psychologist, maybe refer to a dietitian, maybe you refer to the appropriate person to meet that person's needs. And a healthcare provider gives suggestions on where to maybe look. So in this intro, I wanted to give an overview lifestyle intervention for obesity management and set some realistic expectations. So we can ideally make better decisions, work with our people, individualize approaches, and build helping relationships that make obesity management and lifestyle something that makes a person's life better and not just maybe focuses on a number on the scale. Of course, that might be part of it, absolutely, but it's not necessarily the only part of that. And in the following units, we're going to learn at how psychological approaches can help with that. And then we'll also talk specifically about medical nutrition therapy and physical activity approaches as well before we get into pharmaceutical interventions and bariatric surgery as well. See you then.